Happy 2022. I hope everyone had a good holiday and that you were all able to celebrate safely. Welcome back to the ConunDRUM podcast. So for my first guest of the year, I have the one and only Danny Bourgeois. He's the owner operator of Pumk'n Patch Recording Studios in Memramcook, New Brunswick. He's been working in the industry for over 30 years. Like, he started when he was in his early teens, and just became the go-to session guy in the province. He's got a credit of like over 70 recordings at this point, probably more than that. Just a phenomenal individual. His outlook and his positive attitude is just, it's infectious. I would have to say that he's New Brunswick's version of Kenny Aronoff, who is a world-renowned drummer. So I put Danny up on that level, kind of on the Mount Rushmore of New Brunswick drummers, being that positive guy, that go-to guy that gets the job done and is a chameleon and can play all genres of music and bring that feel to everything that he does. He received the Musician's Achievement Award in 2017 at the ECMAs. So we talk about his musical family, how he changed his perspective during the pandemic. It was an amazing chat. I'm kind of rambling on now, so I'm going to stop babbling, and I hope you enjoy my conversation with Danny Bourgeois.
You had a good Christmas holiday and all that stuff.
Yeah, took it pretty easy. Didn't go anywhere. I mean, obviously, everything going on. Stayed pretty close to home. Just before I left work, I got an email saying there was a potential contact from one of the workers. So to just kind of monitor and yeah. So did the rapid test and everything was okay. So
all good. Yeah. That's kind of been the whole thing this year. Everybody doing the little rapid test before, seeing family members and all that stuff. It's like, holy geez. Yeah, I think we're all tired of it. We're all looking forward to moving on again and getting back to what we always do.
Yeah, I mean, you've been pretty busy. I mean, following you on Instagram and doing the sound and those Christmas concerts and
lots of stuff for sure. Actually, this I was telling my wife this week. I said it's kind of weird because I took this week off. We start up a couple projects next week is in the studio and stuff, and it was just like I almost don't know what to do with myself in a sense, because I'm just so used to being on the go that having time off, I almost feel guilty there, like taking a nap in an afternoon. And I'm like, geez, I should probably be doing something right now. But I just got to tell myself, I was like, no, whatever, man, just chill out. It's okay not to have a plan.
You need to take that time off to just reset.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's kind of where I was at anyway, especially the Christmas holidays. And the year was a good year, so I was kind of looking forward to just exactly doing that, just taking a little pause, reset, and then after that, dive back into her again.
Yeah, because it's there waiting for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So how far booked are you in advance now?
All of January's booked up. February's already starting to book up, and then I got a band that's booking in March and April. So basically, I usually like working Monday to Friday. That's kind of where I tend to try to get all my recording done anyways. But depending on the bands, I mean, obviously not everybody's necessarily off during the week, because obviously, some people are still working their day jobs, and then you're doing it as a side thing, right? So so this particular band, like, we're trying to book some weekend stuff, so either like a Friday or Saturday, or maybe do a Sunday and a Monday or whatever, they can do that. So we're kind of spacing about to kind of, lay down 3 or 4 tunes per weekend, maybe, until we get everything done. So I'll be spreading those boys out between March and April. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to juggle that with the hockey with my 2 kids, because, usually around this time, it's quite busy with that. And it's kind of tough because right now everything's kind of on hold with hockey.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to plan out my calendar as far as the recording. So I'm like, well, are those hockey tournaments actually going to happen, or they're not going to happen? So I'm still trying to figure that out, if I want to take and maybe book some studio time during those weekends there, but I'm kind of keeping those options open as well. Right.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can keep those days open for yourself. So if they happen.
Well, that's it. That's it. Yeah. And obviously I've, been after doing this for so many years, my weekends were always a write-off, you know, especially with gigging and, you know, even my years working at the music store. I mean, you know, I worked every single Saturday, you know, back in those days, you know, selling guitars and slinging picks and strings and all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing I learned from the pandemic, honestly, is you know, making time for yourself is very important. You know what I mean? And so my weekends are a little more sacred now than they used to be, because it just, I filled it up with everything music endeavors, you know, which was fine, you know, in my younger years, not that I'm old now, but you know, in my 20s versus being in my 40s are, you know, a different thing. You know, in your 20s, you just go. And it was, you know, 40 hours a week at the music store. And I would do another 35 to 40 hours of studio. So, you know, me going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning after like recording with Tracy Starr or something like that, you know, Steve LeBlanc's Marshall cranked the 10 in my basement was, you know, perfectly normal. And then getting up the next morning at, you know, 8, 9 o'clock and going to work and just, you know, repeat. You know, and then obviously after having kids, it was a thing of like, you know, trying to carve out a little more time. And that's when I basically let the music store go, because I was becoming, you know, busier in the music studio and doing that stuff. And I was kind of at that crossroads of like, okay, well, do I want to work 70, 80 hours a week anymore? Like, I mean, it's just, you know, as much as it's all great and one kind of helps the other, you know, I made a lot of contacts working at the music store, and that definitely fueled my recording studio. But at some point, you know, to have an actual family life and then, you know, do my music, obviously for me, recording and playing was so close to my heart and so passionate about it. You know, that's when the exit of working at the music store kind of took its way, and
work-life balance.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like I said, with this pandemic's kind of been like another little new opener in a sense, because, you know, when we kind of paused in 2020 for like basically the first 3 months there, you know, that March to like May, I kind of took those months off, obviously, because, you know, we're in a red zone and pretty much everything was on shutdown.
Nobody could go anywhere. You couldn't talk to
anyone. Exactly. Right. So it was kind of, it was actually kind of like a pause that was not necessarily we were asking for, because obviously we wanted to get on with our lives. But through that, though, honestly, there was some good that came out of that. And, you know, at the time we ended up moving to Moncton during that time, because we had sold our house in spot in Memramcook, and we're going to build initially back out in Memramcook. But, you know, with everything kind of up in the air, and then our builders and contractors were like, well, hopefully we can get it done by this. There was so much uncertainty and price changes and stuff. We're just like,
the prices were just ridiculous.
Oh, they were ridiculous. So we just bought in Moncton, right at the cusp of everything just blowing out of proportion. So we couldn't have bought at a better time, because, you know, with the market and the inflation of everything. But those 3 months actually got us got me time to, you know, set up my new mixing space here at my spot and in our house, and, you know, put together furniture and just take time off from music. It was actually a good time off to actually just kind of, again, you know, just kind of reset and again, reevaluate again how I want to go about working, you know, and that's why, like I said, I'm kind of a Monday to Friday guy, you know, and that works great, especially with like an artist, for instance, you know, like a singer songwriter that not necessarily has a band. Most of the time is studio guys. So a lot of the guys that work on, you know, that I work with and collaborate with, a lot of them do this full time as well. Or, you know, some of them, you know, fortunately didn't have to go get another job during these times. So luckily,
there was a lot of that.
There's a lot of that. Yeah. Quite a bit of friends that, you know, change career paths altogether. And I think it definitely affected, you know, especially the people that gigged a lot, you know, and that was their primary source of income. When that all stopped, that's like, holy geez, what do I do now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Tuesday and Wednesday coffee shop gigs that, you know, pay the phone bill, and then the next week it pays the rent. Like, yeah,
absolutely. So it was kind of, you know, looking at all of that, you know, after that little pause, I was kind of like, well, I'm going to try to treat this more Monday to Friday. So that's why, like with the band stuff, I'm trying to space them out, you know, a little bit on my weekends. I don't mind doing a little bit of weekends here and there, but it's kind of a sacred thing for me now. I just enjoy my family time on a weekend, unless I got to go out and gig and I'm on the road. That's totally fine. I mean, that's you know, that's a passion I still love. Love doing.
Nothing beats the stage, man.
Oh man. Yeah. This summer was kind of, you know, there was, when we kind of went to that, you know, everything kind of opened up here in New Brunswick, and we kind of went to that green phase again there. I actually had a nice little run of like 2 weeks. It was like, you know, the Kazoo and around the Acadian Festival. So a lot of bands were kind of like, oh shit, we got gigs. So it was good for me in that time, because I was able to, you know, pick up like 10 gigs in a span of a week and a half, 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So
yeah, because you could do the outdoor festivals, like people could space
absolutely.
out. Yeah.
Oh man, it felt so good just to, you know, look over and see other musicians on stage and people smiling in the crowd, because, you know, obviously at that point, the, you know, the mask mandate kind of went away too for a little period of time. So it was, so no, it was definitely, it was a fun 2 weeks.
Fun while it lasted. Yeah. So I don't know if you were aware of the whole premise of the podcast, like with the just getting to know people and sharing some of the backstories in, you know, with each artist.
Yeah, certainly.
And this is a project that was born out of the pandemic as well, because like with no gigs, no in between sets to hang out with the other bands, and you know what I mean, like, or being backstage at a festival, like there was none of that, and I thought that was kind of missing. So I wanted to make an excuse to actually have that conversations with other musicians and artists.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
So just to kind of get to know your story. So you're originally from Moncton.
Yeah.
And I understand you picked up the drums
born and
at
raised
5.
Here.
You were 5 when you started playing? Yeah.
5 years old was my first drum kit, or actually have my own drum set. Was Christmas basically. And it wasn't necessarily that it was for me. Basically, my dad and mom had basically bought a beginner electric guitar. It was actually a nice little guitar, because now looking at, you know, the history of some of these guitars, but it was like a Japanese Les Paul, looked like Les Paul custom basically. I'm trying to think of the name. I don't think it was Raven, but it was something anyways. But they just had put that in this cheap drum kit. It was a Stewart kit, actually had flowers on it. So like the, you know, instead of the Ringo Starr kind of, you know, marine
the
pearl,
oyster shell. Yeah,
it actually had like flowers on it. It was like very psychedelic, you know. Had a 2x4 with a spike for my hi-hat stand, because I don't think he had one with the kit, so he bought it used. But he bought that, put it in the basement. So Christmas morning was completely normal, like usual. We opened up our gifts, and me and my brother were like, oh, we were really hoping for some instruments, right? So just mid-afternoon, my dad's like, oh, hey man, can you go get my hammer downstairs in the basement? I got to put up this picture or whatever. So we went downstairs, me and my brother. We just obviously were like, oh my God, he got us a guitar and a drum kit. But he didn't specifically say the drums are for Danny or the guitar is for Mike. He just kind of let us run to the instrument that we wanted to kind of play. So obviously I ran to the drums, and my brother was kind of like, oh, I'll try the guitar kind of thing. But for the first year, my brother could actually play a drum beat. So for the first year, my parents definitely, you know, my brother was already in grade 1, so I wasn't going to school yet. So I'd go play the drums downstairs, and they definitely thought they brought the drums for the wrong kid. They're like, I think we made the wrong move. You know what I mean? So, but
you have to develop that hand-eye coordination and, you know,
absolutely
independence with your limbs and stuff, right? So
all that, and persistence too. You know what I mean? That was the key. I wanted it so bad that I just every day I would go down and hammer down. And obviously we had a record player, listen to the Loverboy albums and the Toto albums and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Head pins and my parents obviously are very musical. My dad's been playing guitar for a very, very long time, and still does. Actually, he tours with Thane Dunn and the Cadillac Kings there, that Elvis tribute. So he's been playing with Thane now for the past.
With John Flanagan on drums.
John Flanagan, drums and all those boys. So he's retired and went on to doing that, but he's been playing forever through, you know, with bands. So we were kind of fortunate when we were kids that our parents, you know, their band rehearsals were in our basement. So music wasn't necessarily forced on us, you know, when we were kids. It was around us. So, you know, watching my dad and them practice their songs and their sets for their weekends, because they played every weekend. I mean, that was, you know, another source of income to support the family along with working, right? So, we were fortunate in that sense. It was just kind of like it was around us, and it's something that we kind of, we drew to that, and we're just like, well, we want to do this too. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where it all started for me. Just having a musical family around us, and looking up to my Uncle Bernie playing drums, and man, I want to play like that or whatever. It's all, as a kid, you look up to those guys.
The giants, right?
Yeah. Yeah, to go play at the Legion on Sunday afternoon, you were playing Wembley Stadium. You know what I mean? You're like, so
Yep.
whenever we were like,
I remember that, yeah.
Oh man, 7, 8 years old, and we had the gong shows and stuff, like just the variety shows. My dad would take us to those, and we'd go play our Kiss songs, after Buddy just played, Honky Tonk Woman or whatever. but it was great to have that outlet in those kind of events to shape what we do today, full time.
That's funny. As you mentioned that, it brings me back. My brother played the drums. He was like 9 years older than me. So he had a drum kit in our basement, and my dad was always playing in like, the cover bands, like the country cover bands and stuff around Miramichi. And so we had a lot of rehearsals in the basement. And then when my brother got old enough, he started playing with my dad. Right. But my brother was a mechanic, so he'd work long hours. So he'd get me to go to the Legions to set up his drum kit for him. So I would do sound check, and then he'd stroll in, and then he'd show me how it was really done. But he probably could still take me to school. But
those even setting up, like you mentioned, going to set up those gigs, and I used to love doing that. My dad used to play gigs and go set up Saturday afternoon at 1:00 there. Yeah. I used to love going to help him out, and just. And in a weird way, that's kind of what got me even drawn to not just the drumming aspect, but just the whole, mixing, how to patch a mixer, where do the speakers plug in? Oh, what's an auxiliary? How do I get to this? Like just a whole other love of just playing the instruments, but also like setting up the PA systems with them. And also that just fueled that, side of the industry for me as well, because I learned from that as well, just going to set up with them on those Saturday afternoons. You know what I mean? So it was,
the whole production side, the stage show, just
absolutely.
Why are things placed a certain way? Like why is, the rhythm guitar and the bass player on the same side as then the lead guitar is on the other side, like all those stage setups, like what, with the reasons for that. And then you kind of figure it all out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I cherish those memories for sure. And it's all part of what we do today.
Yeah. So you mentioned Loverboy and Kiss. So growing up, listening to, obviously learning how to play drums while listening to records, did you take lessons at all, or is it all just from listening to records?
Honestly, it's all ear training, honestly, to be honest with you. Again, being a musical family, like, when my dad and him played on weekends, sometimes we go stay at my grandma's, and then my dad's younger brothers also had a band called Ransom and stuff, but they would practice in my grandparents' garage. Mm-hmm. So I think honestly, it was just always watching. Watching my uncles and my dad's bands, and two of my uncles are really, really good drummers. My uncle Eugene and Bernie, which played with the Mustangs, and my uncle Zeke toured Canada. My uncle Johnny Comfort back in the 80s, he had a top 40 song on country radio or whatnot. But yeah, he definitely, he showed me some stuff like when I was more, I would say probably more in my early, or not quite, but maybe like 11, 12 years old, because I was already, we had a band, like basically by 6, 7 years old, we moved from Moncton to Dieppe. So me and my brother, we ended up starting a band with my cousin Mark and my cousin Gilles, actually, because they lived right down the street. So that was kind of like our schooling in a sense, like, okay, that's where we're starting to learn songs. So we were cutting our teeth, like I said, learning Kiss tunes and Motley Crue and all this kind of stuff. But my uncle's definitely, like, he showed me some stuff, like, your paradiddles and your doubles and singles and stuff, because whenever I go visit at my grandmother's and stuff too, he had his apartment downstairs. So he had like a little, one of the first, I don't know if you remember those, but the old Remo practice pad kits, which was basically like plastic, gray with the Remo heads on it with a foam underneath. So he had a little practice set that he would use. So he would show me some rudiments and stuff on that. But to actually say, like my parents paying for, drum lessons that I would go to every Tuesday night, it didn't exist in my world. It was really all by ear.
Wow.
And in developing that, it's all sounds and chasing sounds. Well, why does it sound like that? Okay, well, you figure out a technique how to achieve that same sound. You know what I mean? Like, you notice that with drummers, like, Jason Bonham, is similar to his daddy. He kind of has a certain sound and a feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there's a certain drum sound, and Alex Van Halen, same thing. Like, everybody can play those beats, but they sound a certain way. They play those grooves.
Yeah.
So I was always, intrigued by that. What is it? Not just from what heads are they using, but it's their touch on the kit. That's everything, really. It's that's where it comes from, right? So
like you can put them on any drum kit and they'll still sound like themselves.
Absolutely.
Who was it? It was Mike Portnoy was playing on a kid's drum set, and like it still sounded like Mike Portnoy.
Yeah,
absolutely. Just playing on that little Hello Kitty thing. Like it's just
and it's still him, and that's the key. Like, I mean, there's a lot of cool gear out there. Sometimes we tend to say, oh wow, that's a really great sounding drum kit, or that's a really that's a great sounding guitar. Gibson said that, oh, it's a great sounding guitar, and then put the guitar on the stand and says, how does it sound now? You know what I mean? It sounds like the guy playing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, exactly. We all have our touch. We all have our unique. I've said this in like other conversations. Like it's our unique language. Like we all speak the same language, but we all have our own accent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's important. You know what I mean? It's I think even for me as a drummer and a player, I always chased more having a sound. Like for me was, obviously, you want to learn all the rudiments, and, some people want to be the fastest drummer, and you want to, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, for me, it was more important to have a voice to me, that if somebody would hear a recording that I played on, they could say, oh, hey, that's got to be Danny Bourgeois playing drums. To me, that was more important, because a lot of the drummers, like Jeff Porcaro, and there's a lot of these guys, they're amazing drummers by all means. But has there become more drummers technically capable and better than those guys? Well, yeah, if you look at the Vinnies and the Dave Weckels, and now you got these young kids in China that you see them play, and they're like, holy shit, they're 10 years old, and they're just amazing.
Smoking,
But for me, it was always important to serve the song, and at the end of the day, just have my own sound and my own touch and my own feel. That that was I'm chasing more of that than saying, hey, look at how many different styles that I can play and how fast I can play or how slow. Like, not saying those things are not important, but to me, it's more important having a sound, because all the drummers that I looked up to, like the Alex Van Halens and the Vinnies, is when you hear them, like that's them. Jeff Porcaro, like his feel, like, on those Total albums are just amazing. You know what I mean? Like there's a sound there, like
there wasn't
making those sounds sing.
There wasn't a whole lot of stuff that he didn't play on. Like he was the guy, right?
He was the guy. Yeah, absolutely. And having a signature sound, to me, like that alone means a lot.
So who are your top three guys, like growing up?
Top three growing up. So I mean, obviously it shifted. So I mean, obviously starting young, obviously, had certain influence at a younger age versus at a more when I got in my later teens, might have changed. But it's for sure, I think, honestly, like Eric Carr was a huge, because I got into Kiss when they kind of took off the makeup, but I listened to a lot of earlier Kiss stuff, and I always loved Peter Criss's drumming. But Eric Carr, I was listening to that. I was 7, 8 years old. So hearing that thunderous drumming for me he was a big influence, I think, on my playing. And obviously, when we as kids playing some of that stuff, we learned a lot of that era of the Kiss stuff. You know what I mean? So, so obviously I tried to sound like Eric Carr or whatever, but him, Alex Van Halen for sure is another big influence on me. And I would have to say Jeff Porcaro, because we had a lot of Toto albums at home, and my dad was a huge Toto fan as well. So, I listened to that stuff. It was just kind of part of my, part of my library of drummers. But, as I grew older, I mean, obviously I became a huge Dave Weckl, and that's probably more technical again, because these are not necessarily guys that are on mainstream radio, or
they're really not. Like,
so I mean, like there's tons of, that's why, like, you get some people like, I love just Mike Portnoy, and that's it's like it's like Neil Peart fans. Real Neil Peart fans, it's like no other drummer exists. But to me, I'm more of like, okay, I like this drummer for this style, but I also admire the Kenny Aronoffs that
Oh
played
yeah,
on a boatload of albums, and that
from every genre.
for every genre.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked more up to those guys because I mean those were the working class musician, man. They could just hop in from any situation, whether it was rock to country to pop to whatever, and they would just slide in there and kind of be chameleon. And I think I always admire any kind of musician, whether guitar player or drummer or bass player or whatever. To me, that's working. You're working in an industry where you can kind of jump from any style and just hop in there and sound like you were always meant to be in that position playing with that band. You know what I mean? So I find that's magical where, again, you take a Neil Peart and he sounded amazing with Rush. And oddly enough, I'm not going to say that he wasn't one of my inspirations, but I didn't really listen to much Rush growing up. Like I knew their stuff. I listened to it, but he wasn't definitely, he wasn't one that I was like, I want to be like.
Yeah, I wasn't a big prog rock fan. I didn't do a lot of like I heard them and I liked the songs and they would come on, but I didn't like seek out a Rush album to listen to it and dissect it like a lot of the other
dissect
guys.
it. Yeah, rip apart every drum part and learn every little part. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? And I'm not, hey, whoever kind of got into that, there's tons of drummers that do, and all the power to them. For me, it just wasn't part of my journey. I mean, I was more into listening to Huey Lewis and the News and listening to his drum shuffle. Honestly, to be honest with you, like that was another band that I listened a lot to back in my teens as well. So, but yeah, it's just all music for me at the end of the day. I mean, it's all, if it sounds and it feels good and you listen, you're just like, man, this is good. To me, that's what was always important. So I had just as much admiration for session guys, honestly, than just like I said, the popular guys. And I mean, everybody, picking out the Neil Peart's an easy one to go to, or the,
whoever's on the poster, basically.
Yeah, exactly. They play in a big band. And it's like, that's the best. Who is the best drummer in the world? But does it really matter? It's about, serving the song and making it feel good. Like that's the best drummer for that band. But for another situation, this guy is the guy.
Yeah. I remember listening to John Bon Jovi when he split from Bon Jovi and did his own thing.
Yes.
And I remember seeing the liner notes, and like you mentioned Kenny Aronoff, and he played on that whole album.
Yeah, with Blades of Glory and stuff there, right?
Yeah, Blades of Glory and all that. And so I was like, that was the first time I was like, wait a minute, that's not Tico Torres. What's going on here? And then I was like, Kenny Aronoff, I know that name. Oh, he's the guy from Mellencamp. So that was kind of the first time I was like, oh, you can get other people from other bands and kind of make a record like that. Like to me, that was just like, holy shit. So then I started following like, okay, well, let me look at these other albums. And then you look at like country albums and you see like J.R. Robinson and like all those guys. You're like, there's guys that make a living doing just that. So is that something that you aspired to? Because I know you do a lot of session work.
Absolutely. Because because my first recording session were, that I can think of, I think it was probably like, we obviously started recording young in a sense of like by ourselves. Because when I was about 10, 11 years old, my dad bought us a Tascam, Porta One studio, 4 tracks, and me and my brother with a PVXR 6-channel mixer, with SM58 vocal mics. We didn't have like high-end gear. We just go downstairs in the basement and mic up the drums. And so those are kind of if you think about it, kind of our starting of like, hearing yourself back, because it's one thing, like everybody sounds great in the garage, in the basement. You're like, man, we're rock stars. It's easy to go there. But when you hear yourself back, when you can kind of dissect your playing a little bit, and it's not dissecting it to like, oh, that feels great. It's more or less like, how does it feel when you listen back to it? Does, like, is it grooving? Is there pocket there? So that kind of started, the interest in the recording end, for me. And, like the Jeff Porcaros, which he played on so many different albums other than, the Toto stuff, and like I said, the Kenny Aronoffs, like those guys, J.R. Robinson, like you see those guys making a living at it. So once I got my first phone call to actually go in, and it was at Nando's studio, actually it was CMS Studios there in Moncton, 24 track reel to reel. Like I still remember those days, like my dad driving, I was 14 years old, and he got me to go in to play drums on a couple tunes because might have seen me at the Urban Corral on a Sunday afternoon, for all I know, at a gong show or whatever, but the fact that he took a chance on me to go in, and actually it was actually a paid gig, and he's like, oh, right on, I'm going to go play drums on something. But I was nervous, obviously, anybody else, but just that feeling of being in studio and, the consoles and seeing how things came together and the multi-tracking, like anything else, or okay, we're going to get down the bed tracks and then we'll overdub the other stuff or whatever. But just seeing the whole workflow of that, was always interesting to me, and something that I quickly fell in love with, and learning from that too, because he'd be like, hey, you remember that, that fill, that cool fill there that you just played before the solo? I'd be like, yeah, don't play that. It's like, oh, okay, so but
learning
you're
how
all
to
learning
self-edit.
yeah, absolutely. Because it's like it's cool, but it's not called for. It's like, it's like you're not playing for you, you're playing for the song. So those are the, definitely the where it all started. So looking at that, I was like, wow, getting home, it's like, hey, I made a couple $100 today to go play drums on an album. Yeah. But, that young, obviously not knowing, like, here I am now actually really doing my living at doing that. And it's building it up through the years. But, it's something that I thrive to, in a sense, to be able to be a session guy, to me meant that in a sense, I didn't really have to move away from Moncton. And it's not that I was scared to move away, because I was still lucky in a sense of traveling with, many artists, throughout Europe, and I still did some tours and all that kind of stuff, which I'm very, very grateful for. And I love doing that. But I think there was always that kind of thing of like, oh, if you don't move out of town, you're not gonna be able to make your living at playing music. You're just gonna play in bars, playing Brown Eyed Girl there for $75 a night. You know what I mean? Like, there's just that stereotypical image that people think that musicians, like, oh, well, unless you're living in LA. If you're not in LA or Nashville, you ain't doing nothing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that was kind of a thing for me to even, in a sense, kind of prove that whole stereotype of thinking that it is possible. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And to be able to do it. And obviously, I mean, beyond drums, obviously I got into the whole world of engineering, but that all stemmed from doing those first initial drum, sessions, because it started with one album. Next thing I got called on another one. Then I was doing 2 a year, then 3 a year, then 4, and then, kind of built up. And then Jacques Gautreau got me on some sessions. Then I was doing some sessions at CBC studios. So the more I was doing it, the more comfortable I got at doing them. Mm-hmm. And then your workflow gets a lot more consistent, and knowing what not to play versus what you might think is cool to play is, just getting into that whole mindset.
And that spreads too, right? Because people talk about, hey, he can take the criticism if you tell him
absolutely
that, tone it back, or because that, I mean, ego's involved too, right? So you have to be able to not have such a thin skin. Yeah.
Because really, serving the music is the key. And the ones that usually that are the naysayers are the ones that are a little less, and I don't want to say successful, because I mean, success is measured in different, whatever is successful to you. Some people being successful is they need $1 billion bucks in the bank. To me, making a living at something that I love doing, to me, is successful in a sense. And you know what? I live in Moncton. I didn't have to move to Toronto. I didn't have to move to Montreal or all those places. And I still got the tour, all the same places, some of those guys. Would I have more opportunities sometimes living in those big cities? Yeah, maybe as a touring drummer, because I would be in a place that there's more stuff going on. Let's be honest, in the East Coast it is a little tighter scene. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But I definitely, from all those sessions in building up and then getting interested into, recording and the engineering part, I definitely want to broaden my horizons even more than just being a drummer, just also as an audio engineer as well, and getting into producing albums and doing that kind of stuff. All of that was all still fueled of, how can I wake up every day and that my job every day is making music, whether it's loading up my vehicle with my drums, going off to a gig to go play for an artist and serve their music at the best that I possibly can, to, I'm going to go record today, or to somebody sending me some WAV files through Dropbox that was recorded in Calgary, Alberta, but I'm mixing it here in Moncton, because the whole digital world definitely opened up that window. But to me, I wanted to prove that I didn't have to move to Vancouver, or I didn't have to move to Toronto to be successful doing music for a living and doing a good living at it. Like, I'm very, very grateful. I'd never been happier, honestly, to be able to still, especially in these times in a pandemic, to be able to still be doing this every day, that I didn't have to go out and go back to maybe working at a music store or and I'm not putting that down, because I loved working with the crew that I did. It's not, I don't want to put it out there in the sense of like, it sucks for the musicians that have to go work at Kent now. Like, that's not what I'm getting at. For me, I was like, okay, how can I still work through this world that we're new normal that we're in kind of thing? So that's where, you know, you have to utilize the digital aspect of it. So to be able to record, like I was doing sessions at the studio where it was a producer in Montreal, but we were doing it through like Session Wire. So just like we're doing right now, we had videos, but my DAW was linked to his DAW. So basically, if I was playing you a session, you in your place right now, you got your studio monitors, you're listening to the session in real time. You're in Montreal, but the singer's at my studio. And then you could say, hey, can you re-sing this third line in that chorus? I kind of hear you going here. And she's in my vocal booth listening to you, the producer, at complete somewhere else, right in her headphones. And you're like, yeah, sure, I'll try that out. Like, it's amazing when you think about that.
That really is
two different places. So that again kind of tightens up the music industry in a sense of like, you don't necessarily have to move anywheres. I mean, if you built up, you built up something with the music community where people can trust you and know what it is that you bring to the table, you can work from anywhere in the world. And really, when it comes to even doing like a tour, I mean, all it is hopping on a plane and let's go. Like, I mean, it doesn't really matter anymore. So for me, that was a huge thing, looking up to the JRs and all these drummers that were like, these guys are not necessarily on the road. They would tour, but they were doing albums after album. Every day they just go in and record an album for somebody else. So I always looked up to those guys, because every night they're not sleeping in a hotel. They're sleeping in their home with their loved ones. So that's where I felt staying here. And obviously I built up a reputation. So moving for me was not that it was scary in that sense, but I'm like, I built up.
You have a community, right?
Like a music community that nourishes me to be able to do what I love doing, and that trust me with their craft. Because at the end of the day, when you write a song or you're hiring me to go play a gig with you, that means that you are trusting me, and you either know what I bring to the table or you want what it is that I bring to the table into your fold, into your team. So I don't take that lightly. I kind of look at that, I'm very fortunate to be able to jump from that country gig or then go do a really heavy rock gig with another band, and then
playing a Kiss tribute band.
Yeah, the Kiss tribute band to whatever. It's like, I kind of look at it's like, what? It's not something to throw away at the end of the day. And even in the studio community, the work was there as well. So I'm like, why would I want to throw away all that to go move to a 1-bedroom apartment in Montreal, paying top rent, and then having to schlep my gear in a cab to go play for less money, actually, at the end of the day, because you got to look at it. There's more competition, there's more musicians, there's more everything else. So you might be good at what you do, but there's also the guy right down the street who's just as good. And what would separate the guys that were gigging from the ones that weren't gigging wasn't necessarily their playability. A lot of time came down to, how are you as a guy? How are you as a person to hang out with? That's a huge part.
So important.
Listen? Yeah. You are you serving your ego, or are you serving the song? Are you serving the band or your ego? So once you stop serving your ego and you start just serving the client that's hiring you to play with them, then you start noticing the doors start opening up, because they're going to say, wow, I really enjoyed working with this guy. And on top of them, stepping into my world, which is whoever the client that you're working with, that's their music world, and that you make that feel good, and that you're cool hang to on top of that. Because you got to think, when you're on the road, for instance, there's a lot of time in the van there with 4 other dudes or whatever, you know what I mean? So that 1 hour and a half of show, man, compared to the 22 and a half hours at hotels, delayed flights, or flat tire somewheres, you got to get along as a whole. So you got to be pretty open and communication wise with a lot of people too, to thrive in
because those are challenges. Like, that's when you test each other, you put yourselves in a bad situation, and how do you handle it, right? So that then you bond and you grow, and then that just makes the stage even better, because like you become tight as people, not just as musicians. So then that chemistry kind of forms out of all that.
Absolutely. And it becomes a family thing. And that's for me why staying in Moncton. And for me, like, it wasn't fear of like, it wasn't so much scared of like, oh geez, what if I might move to Montreal or move to Toronto and then there's no work and I fail at it? Oh geez, I'm going to come back to Moncton and fail. It wasn't even that. It was that because I started at such a young age that I was already building, whether I knew it or not, but I was already building kind of like my own business. Because if you're doing something, you don't necessarily have to be part of a company, even though you're a one person, that does multi stuff. It is a business. You know what I mean? Like, I got an HST number like everybody else. I got to pay my taxes at the end of the year. I got to claim all my stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't willing necessarily to throw away all that work that I had already put into working in a community here and throughout the East Coast. And you're building a reputation all throughout those years, right? So if there wasn't any work at all there for me, maybe I would have moved away at that point. But life plays out like it plays out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I'm grateful the way it played out because, now I got 2 healthy boys and a wife that loves me dearly. And we get to
she's
share
a musician, an accomplished musician in her own right.
Absolutely. And that's how we met, honestly, is through music.
I was going to ask, like, is that how you met on stage playing with Dominique?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she was playing with a band that had hired me. A band from Memramcook at the time had hired me for a couple of gigs and had hired her as well as a fiddle player. That was when I first met her. And then I guess that was kind of cool. But years later afterwards, we were up in Europe with a band that I played with my brother and Guy Leblanc. It was called Garoche. It was actually a French band at the time that we had recorded a new album. So the Festival Interceltique, it's in Lorient, France. They had hired us to go play basically for 2 weeks up there. But there was a bunch of bands. So she was one of the main acts. She had already went there several years and was already touring throughout Europe already. But that's kind of when we first, I guess that's when the spark actually kind of connected. Yeah. She was only there with Steve LeBlanc guitar and a bass player, not even a drummer. So Ramy, the bass player from PA, was like, hey man, you should come up and jam with us. After a couple of beers there, that happens. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, sure. They're fiddle tunes. There's no vocals. There's no nothing. So it's a different kind of sitting in and jamming moment. It's not like, hey, we're going to play the Joker. So, when the chorus comes in, or everybody knows the chorus of Brown Eyed Girl. Yeah. No, this is fiddle tune. So there's like A section, B section, C section. And the key about all of that is just, every section kind of make it where it's either going to elevate or we're bringing stuff down. So yeah, I just ended up going up and jamming with them. And then after that jam, he's like, well, you want to come and play the rest of the sets with us this week? So anyways, I end up playing with her for the rest of the week as well. Not really even asking for any money. I was having such a blast. Yeah. Well, it's fun music to play. Yeah. It was something that I never really did before. I mean, like, obviously I played on her albums, but playing with her live was a different thing. So yeah, so that's kind of where the whole connection started. You know what I mean? For her. So
when you played on her albums, had you met her? Or were you just like a session?
No, I had met her at that time. Oh, yeah, okay. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, but obviously, there's the age difference too. Obviously at the time, when I did her album, she was probably like 16 or 17 years old at that time. Right. So, yeah. I wasn't looking at her in the same way. No, not at all. Yeah, totally different. As she grew older and then, just, everything happens for a reason, obviously that moment in our lives, just something clicked with us. And, we've been together for 16 years now already. It's crazy when I think about it, but so
where you have the 2 boys, are you kind of taking that same page out of like your dad's book and like letting them come to music on their own? Absolutely. And me and Dominic chat about this, obviously, because I feel it's different because obviously today we have technology and all that stuff, but I kind of feel bad in a sense because for me, it was in my household. And when I think about when I rehearse with bands today, I mean, I don't rehearse in my house. I go to the studio in Memramcook at La Place, and whatever artist I'm playing with, whether it's Joey Dobin Haché or whatever band, it doesn't matter. A lot of times, if we're going to have a rehearsal for the gigs, it happens there. So often when I go rehearse, the kids are not around it. Yep. So there's moments actually, not saying I feel like a bad parent, but like I'm not forcing it on them. There's a drum set up right outside here. They're just for the kids. They're like a smaller drum kit. So if they want to go get on it and bang on it, they do. But yeah, it's kind of, we're kind of leaving it up to them in a sense. Like, again, they're, one's 9, the other one's 11 years old. So yeah. Still lots of time.
there's still lots of time. I mean, there's so many great musicians that came out into this world that only started playing when they were 15 or 16.
Yeah.
So just because you don't start at 5 and you're sounding like Dave Weckl by 9 doesn't mean that your career's over. I mean, like, yes, there is those prodigies. They're out there. We see them all over YouTube, you know, these amazing guitar players and drummers and bassists that are 9 and playing like they're 25. So, but when they want to do it, they'll do it. But sometimes we talk about it. I mean, always like, maybe we should just play music. Maybe we should jam, me and you, at the house a little bit more. So it's just
so they can
more
see
around
it.
there. Yeah. There's always music in our house. Like we're always listening to, you know, albums. We're kind of like vinyl heads now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Got a record player again.
Same here.
4 years ago. And I like listening to vinyl because I find it's a commitment. As soon as you take an album, I'm like, I'm putting this album on because I'm going to listen to it. Yeah. Versus like an iPhone or whatever you're playing with. You just jump. You know, it's different. You know.
Even when I listen to music digitally, I'm an album guy. Like I start from the start of the record and I play all the way through however many tracks. You know. Yeah. Because I mean that's how the artist put it out. Like there's a reason for track listings and the way a certain order of songs is on a record, because it creates that journey. You know, from song 1 to the last song on the record. You're going somewhere, right? Emotionally, you're uplifted, and then you bring you down, you know, all the peaks and valleys of that. So I find it's very important to listen to an album versus just, you know, the song of the week.
100%. And even like the order, you know, sometimes that they put the album, there's a reason why, you know what I mean? Like, and it's a snapshot of where you're at. And I go through this with artists today when we're recording too, you know what I mean? Because you'll get people that are like, you know, I'm not saying perfectionists, but you know, some people that will take forever to record and then work on their EP, and like 5 years later nothing's done, but you're not even at the same spot as you were 5 years ago.
Sound doesn't mean the same thing.
It doesn't mean the same. So sometimes there is a beauty of, look, here we are now. This is where we are. We can't, you know, when you have to treat music of what the song and how it feels good. And even as an artist, because you know, overthinking stuff and taking forever to get something done, a lot of time that stuff never gets released. Yeah. So like you say, you know, you put an album on, this is a snapshot of that artist, you know, whether it's a Billy Joel album or whatever, you pop it on. This is where Billy Joel was in 1977. This is the music that he was writing.
And it's a snap in time.
Absolutely. And I kind of enjoyed that era where people are putting out a new album every year practically, and sometimes 2 albums a year. You know what I mean? It's
look at the Beatles. Like
and look at how much from like, you know, the White Album to like Eleanor Rigby or like, you know, Revolver to how their sound changed within like 2 years. Like just like, is this the same band? You know what I mean? Like from Ticket to Ride to, you know.
And that's the other thing, like with bands, especially like if I listen to a band's first album and then like they've put out like 5 or 6, like for example, like Queens of the Stone Age, like I love that first album. It's probably my favorite album. But as you listen to their collection, like you see the development and the growth, and then you listen to the last album and it makes sense if you've gone on that journey with them. But if you listen to the first record and then the last record, you're like, what the fuck happened here? Like what, you know, you don't see all that in between. So you know, the catalog is important as well as just an album.
Absolutely. Yeah. And today too, I mean, we're much more in a world of singles. That's the other thing, right? So it's like, what is the journey? I don't release the single here and another one there.
The journey is going to the club and then bouncing and then hitting home afterwards. That's it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. It's like, different times for sure. But
so when you're not playing drums or in the studio, what are you most likely doing?
Honestly, I mean, we're kind of like, you know, like the weekends, we like being out and about with the family. That's for sure. Summertime, we got a camper, obviously. So, which is that's kind of like
an RV?
Our home away from home. We disconnect from home, but we're seasonal. So a lot of beach time with the kids.
Yeah.
But also I work from there too. I mean, again, now with like the digital world, like if you got some really good headphones, I can get a lot of work done, you know, just with my laptop, you know, when I'm not physically here at my mixing space or at the studio. But we try to keep active. I mean, I love every, you know, taking walks, and the pandemic actually got me more into that, but it's kind of like a daily routine now. It's just kind of like just to clear your head and just go out for fresh air. It's good for the soul to get out, you know, and do that stuff. And you know,
so when you go on a walk,
what's that?
when you go out on your walks or whatever, like, do you have AirPods in? Like, are you listening to stuff, or are you just like nothing at all, just the quiet?
Sometimes nothing at all.
Yeah.
And then I'll either, even if I do have my AirPods, sometimes it's just to even discover music that I haven't heard before. You know what I mean? Like, either certain clients will mention some names and I'll jot them down in my notes. Sometimes, oh, hey, listen to that guy, or listen to this artist here. So sometimes I'll just kind of go find the artist on, I subscribe to YouTube Music because I was tired of, seeing the ads when I watch YouTube videos and stuff.
Yeah.
But along with that, at least I got basically the same thing as Apple Music. You have all your albums and go listen to your artists that way there. So it's a good way of doing that. And also sometimes I'll listen to my mixes sometimes. So if I'm working on a project where I'm like, okay, I want to hear this outside of my mixing space.
What it sounds like in the real world. Yeah.
Yeah, just real world. Just pop in my AirPods. I just kind of drop them in Dropbox, and then, but it's great because you're moving, so you're burning calories, and at the same time you're keeping active, and at the same time I can analyze, maybe some mix decisions or whatever. If like, I want to go back and tweak this or vice versa. But yeah, it's all waves of that. I mean, usually even like in my car, like after finishing a recording session, like I'm usually, like, oddly enough, I'm listening to a lot more like, older jazz stuff like Ella Fitzgerald, and sometimes I want to just listen to music that I don't have to like overanalyze. And that's if there's a negative of doing what I'm doing for a living, is I tend to listen to music always analyzing.
Yeah.
I listen like, oh yeah, fuck, I like that snare. Yeah, it sounds like 4-to-1 ratio on that, and that's compressed at minus 20 dBs, and has a little boost there at 5.2K. Like, I tend to like listen to music that way, and sometimes that's where the vinyl comes in for us at the family. When I put on a vinyl, I'm not listening to music in that way. Yeah. But in the car, I tend to, like you say, with digital, like, you know what I mean? I don't know why, but when I listen to radio stations and stuff, I tend to like analyze sometimes. So yeah. Sometimes
think of why did they make that decision? Like, why are they using that compressor?
Well, especially with today's music, I find, or today's productions, because as much as we work in this field, you're always trying to stay on top of it, right? Because you get artists coming up to you, and they're, they might be the next Florida Georgia line band or whatever, so you always got, anyways,
that's a bad
you got to kind of
example.
listen to lots of different stuff and try to, keep on top of the what's in now, what's the in thing.
Yeah.
So when I listen to older music, I tend not to listen to it with my producer ears or my audiophile ears. I just listen to music for what it is. And that the fact it's like, wow, this is a great song. And who cares on what tape it was recorded on? And I don't care what microphone they use on top of the overheads of the drums. It just sounds good. It sounds good because it's a good song played by great musicians and well sung. And I can just, and it's nostalgic too. And it's probably the same thing for yourself. And certain albums you put on, it brings you right back to when you're 7 years old, going for a drive in the backseat of your dad's car, you know what I mean, or whatever. So I tend to like listen to older stuff for that aspect of it as well. Just the nostalgia of it, you know what I mean?
And you get inspiration, you get re-inspired by the things that inspired you in the first place.
Yes.
Right? Because like listening to stuff now, like you can get inspiration, but all the stuff from back in the day kind of gets lost because there's so much out there that every once in a while you come back and you're like, oh yeah, that's why I started playing like that, or that's why I'm into that genre more than this genre, because and again, that speaks to your language and how you play your instrument.
Absolutely. It's the history of becoming the person that you are, in a sense. I mean, whether we realize it or not,
it all shapes us.
They're all the stepping stones.
Yeah.
Do
you do a lot of reading?
I do, actually, and I gotta do more. But I just picked up the book. What is it? The 5 a.m. Club or whatever. So I got to get onto that. We were actually supposed to go on vacation, obviously, but for after Christmas, but we canceled that. But so I ended up buying a couple books for my vacation because I was going to sit on the beach and just kind of disconnect from the all the COVID news we keep on getting all the time. God, I mean, so. But so anyways, we're going to postpone that. But yes, I do enjoy reading, and I enjoy reading from an actual book. There's just something about the feel of a book, the paper, the smell. I find when I'm reading on a tablet, it's the same device that, that I work on, in a sense, when I'm recording, or if I'm, if you're just on your social media. So I just find I get more distracted.
Well, it's a parallel. It's kind of a parallel to listening to vinyl, as opposed to listening to an iPad or, your iPhone.
Absolutely.
having a book in your hand versus, swiping on your device.
Tablet. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
making that commitment, right? So
Yeah.
if you're grabbing the book, because it's like I'm taking 30 minutes to read, or I'm taking, so
And
yeah,
you don't get a notification while you're reading. Oh, now I got to check my messages, or
that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a big, I love obviously the, I read Kenny Aronoff's book and Slash's book. Like I like a lot of autobiography stuff in some of the road stories.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading now. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously if you're in KISS, but the Ace Frehley book was really, really good as well. But I also like reading like the 5 a.m. Club. It's kind of like, I'd say they're like self-help books, but it's kind of that motivation, because on top of music, what is the business aspect of it, right? And I think that's where a lot of musicians, tend to, the ones that succeed doing it or actually making a living at it, is because they also looked at the business aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
So versus just saying, hey, I want to
Hire
play
me.
music and
Yeah.
I'll drink my paycheck tonight and then whatever. You know what I mean? So I was always intrigued with the business aspect. And I think a lot of business tools, there's a lot of great books out there. They're not necessarily music, but either people that created apps or, people work in the real estate industry or whatever. Business is business. And I think it's something that we should all, anything to do with finances, I'm always intrigued by that as well, because obviously I want to keep on doing what I'm doing and be able to nurture that and make sure that I make the right choices, where I put my investments and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah. So that's the
that was a big
entrepreneurial aspect of what you do.
Yeah, it is, and for me, this business, it is an entrepreneurial aspect, just because I love playing drums, or I love, producing artists and mixing and all that stuff, doesn't mean I should be like feeling guilty and like I shouldn't care about the money aspect of it all. I just want to do the music aspect. No, if I want to do this forever, or at least for a next 10 years, then I have to look at the aspect of that. So a lot of those books, I tend to be drawn to those books as well, because I think it's all things that come into play with what I'm doing. It's not just playing drums, and it's not just being able to have good ears to mix albums. There's so much more to being successful at doing this business than just doing your thing. Because it's yes, you have to have the talent, but talent doesn't give you longevity in this business. You know what I mean? It's be able to manage, be able to, how can you communicate with others? You know what I mean? And to be able to communicate with them, and all those clients that you work with every day, that you make them feel comfortable. You know what I mean? They have to be comfortable around you, whether it's in a recording studio or in a live aspect. You're there for them. So there's a lot of those self-help books that apply to every other business.
Yeah.
Just working at the music store was a huge, like managing a guitar department and dealing with clients and customers every day, tenfold. That is helped me 100% to be able to achieve the success, even just in my musical journeys. You know what I mean? Because it's all, those applications all apply to everything we do every day. So so I'm a big, I love those kind of books as well. And actually, surprisingly, one of those books, what was it now? I was reading it, but one of those books is actually what led me to quit my job at Long and McQuaid and say, fuck it, I'm doing this on my own.
Take the jump.
I was taking that jump, and it was a scary jump, because we had just built our house out in Memramcook. I had built my studio. I actually had an engineer buddy of mine, great bass player, Etienne LeBlanc, which I hired a lot to play bass on some of the projects that I was working on. But there was a time where I was paying him $25 an hour to go work in my studio to track people while I was at the music store, making less than that, selling strings and guitars. And I just kind of got that aha, like that moment. I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like, why? Like, I should.
You're just spinning your tires, not going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm paying somebody else to do my dream job. Wait a minute. I should be the one in the studio. I built that studio so I could be in it working. You know what I mean? Right. So that was kind of a thing. And then I had won a trip, oddly enough, because I had sold so many Gibson guitars or whatever through Long McQuaid. So during that trip to Mexico, I did a lot of book reading and what's the name of the book? Something Dream Bigger. I forget what it was anyways, but it was just really, really good book. And there was just a lot of good pointers in that book that kind of just maybe, look and reassess where I'm at and the age that I was at that time. Mm-hmm. We didn't have kids, obviously, but it was almost like, you know what?
It's now or never.
Any longer and
it'll pass you by. You'll miss it. Yeah.
you'll miss it. And it's like that even now. Like if you want to do something, I really truly believe you just have to, yeah, it's scary, but that was scary too. Quitting a job after building a $350,000 home in Memramcook and quitting your job and then having that, having that debt, like, and hoping the fact that like, well, hopefully I'll have enough albums. I had 3 albums lined up, but nothing guaranteed that any one of those bands could have said, you know what, we're going to cancel the session. Like, I was still kind of like, and then after those 3 albums, what else was there? Like, I didn't know what else was coming my way, but I knew that I was working in this field. I was already 5 years. And I was like, well, my studio business has been consistent from when I was in Riverview, working with Iron Giant and Tracy Starr and tons of those bands, that I was like, well, it's been kind of keeping consistent the past 5 years, So I just put that trust into just, if I want to do more of this, I have to make myself more available to be doing more of this.
Exactly.
And by working the day job at 50 hours a week, I was basically taking 50 hours away from me to be able to do more of what I wanted to do. So it was just one of those steps. So yeah, those kind of self-empowerment kind of books, I enjoy reading those. I'm not saying I'm going to live by them, but at least there's always little,
there's always something
in those
that you can get out of
reading
it.
that make you reflect on where you're at, or maybe where it is that you want to go. And that growing never stops. I truly believe we should never get too comfortable. And again, and even now living here in Moncton, I'm grateful. And I'm I can say I'm one of the lucky ones that I'm actually making a living doing this full time, but still even today at 44, I still can't get too comfortable. I always got to stay on top of things all the time. Like I said, listening to productions, and when I listen to music, I'm always like with my, my analytical ears are on, I choose when to turn off and when to be in the moment of work, at the end of the day. So, so there's that beauty of like uncertainty. If you get too comfortable, I feel you get lazy. And when you get lazy, that's when things start just,
you get complacent and things just start falling away.
Yeah. And then you might lose the drive or you lose the passion. So it's not always easy, because it's not every single album or every project or every gig that you're going to go do is going to be those, wow, that was the most amazing gig of my life. You know what I mean? Like some of those gigs are like, yeah, it was okay, but it's still not a reason to give up, or, just a body in motion to me is life. You just work through life. That's what it is. You know what I mean? You keep on trucking away, man. Like,
I've said that any movement is good movement, and anything that's, even if it's just a little baby step towards your goal, it's still that much closer to where you want to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a huge thing that I keep on reminding myself every day. That's
not something that everybody knows right away. That comes with experience,
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times when you're younger, you take it for granted and you just expect it to happen, right?
Yes.
You expect that call to come or that gig to land on your lap, and I'm a good drummer. Why am I not getting that gig? It's like, well, you got to put the work in. You got to take those steps and make yourself available for when the opportunity comes to be able to grab it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what I mean? I still remember, in my young 20s, like watching TV shows, and I was doing some of that stuff a little bit, but like the TV show that I do now with Tout Simplement Country that we film in Halifax, that's, it's 12 TV shows that we do in a span of 3 weeks, and it's a lot, because you're learning 12 to 14 songs every day. You're playing 12 new tunes, man. It's 12 songs that you might have never heard before. You know what I mean? So you got to get into the chart reading world and all that kind of stuff.
So for that type of a gig, you'd need to be reading. Or at least
charting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not that every chart is like, oh, kick, snare, kick, snare, with the hi-hat on 8th notes and 16ths. Like,
no.
Mainly it's knowing. I mean, you have to have the ear, number one, because first you got to listen to the song. Okay, what is the vibe of the song? How is the drummer feeling in the recording? Because to me, when the artist comes on the TV, to feel good about the band backing them up, not just me hitting the right drums at the right spots, but having it with the right feel is important as well. So there is, there's listening aspect. But I was one of those guys in my 20s that I admired those guys that had those TV gigs, that were doing them every year. And I was like, man, why don't I get one of those TV gigs? I mean, where I can play, 12 shows in a row and be on a TV series.
Mhm.
But here I am, that it just happened at age 42 or 44. I mean, yeah, I did the house band gigs or the one-off gigs, or I did lots of TV stuff, but an actual, like kind of the David Letterman kind of TV gig.
Yeah, the house
You're
band.
the drummer for this gig and you're there for all 12 episodes, and hey, see you next year at next season.
Yeah.
But I wanted that in my 20s, and I was like everybody else, like, well, why did he get the gig and I didn't get the gig? Like you said, it's experience. But here I am in my 40s, and finally, again, I feel grateful. I'm not pissed off that I didn't get that gig in the 20s. All I know is I have that gig now at 44, and I'm going to do everything in my power to stay on top of it, to keep that gig.
Yeah.
And be grateful that I got it. You know what I mean? But it's all those years of playing and how many albums that had to play on to get. And I think a lot of people tend to forget that. You know what I mean? They like you said, they want to jump from like out of their garage to getting the phone call with Megadeth. It doesn't happen that way. You know what I mean?
No.
It's like most of the time we don't realize, even bands that come out, we're like, fuck, they're right big now. That just kind of happened overnight. Really?
They've been a band for 15 years.
Because maybe this band is from Chicago and you don't live in Chicago, but how do you know that this band didn't play every Monday night at the local bar for the past 10 years trying to schlep their originals? We just hear about them now that they're kind of becoming big, but the work was put in. And I think a lot of people, the ones that succeed are the ones that keep on putting in the work. And I have this conversation with my brother a lot, because obviously he's a, phenomenal guitar player, and I work with him, on a regular daily basis, when we produce albums together or playing in the same bands or get hired for the same gig. But he's a guitar teacher, and he noticed the difference just in the past 15 years, back when he was teaching, 20 to 30 students every week, and they stuck with it. Where now we're kind of in that generation, instant gratification. A lot of kids are like, they want to go from learning the E chord to becoming Eddie Van Halen. And when they realize it doesn't happen in a year, like you said, tapping out.
I'm done.
It's like, well, you got to give yourself the chance. Like you don't get the results if you don't put in the time. And it's like that with anything. So I think it's very important, to always, at the end of the day, self-assess, where you're at and where is it that you want to go. And I think it's good to do that, every new year, we tend to do that on New
Year's resolution.
What am I doing for 2022? But I think you should be doing that. If not every day, at least once a week or once a month, at least just reassess. And that's where I find going for walks, honestly, like in the pandemic kind of drove me to doing that. Like, I try to keep active, and, obviously playing drums is keeping you active, and gigging and being on the road. And I watch what I eat. I try not to, to eat bad foods, and try to keep clean eating, because I'm not getting younger.
Same here, man.
It's the important aspect. If I want to keep on doing what I'm doing, and not saying that image has to do with it, but if I'm going to get hired by a band in their 20s, well, I can't look like the guy that's, 44 that looked like he's half dead because I abused my system with booze and drugs all my life, and basically didn't give a shit about myself. You know what I mean? So it's like
that only worked with Cheap Trick, the guy with the cigarette.
Yeah, exactly. That's fine if I play with the same band.
It's fine, right?
Yeah. Keith Richards play with Rolling Stones, and that's it. But I want to be able to step in any situation, and obviously I want to sound the part and make the people that I'm playing with feel good, but you also want to look the part. So you also want to be able to slide in from whether it's a country gig to a rock gig or whatever. So, the pandemic in a sense kind of got me even more in the path of kind of, that health. And I think a lot of people did, because it was just for a mental health, just after a while, you kind of start going stir crazy in the house. I mean, as much as it's like, wow, this is great. I got all this free time to myself in the house. After a while, you're like, you're kind of like
going
an
stir
animal
crazy.
in a cage.
Yeah. Start pacing around. You got to find something to do.
Yeah. So these walks were very therapeutic that way for mental health wise, but physically as well. You start dropping some weight and you're starting to feel better, which again is actually better for your mental health, because those endorphins, bring you in a happy place. And also it gave me time to reflect without any noise, without noise that could be my kids asking me, "Hey, Papa, can I?" That was my me time, in a sense, where I didn't have to talk music with anybody, didn't have to talk household stuff. And my wife's the same way. She enjoys her walks, the same thing. It's like, it's just taking that 1 hour a day just to go out, and then reassess. What is it that you're going, not just musically, but how are we doing as a family, you know, because all that stuff all has to line up, you know, at the end of the day, for me to keep on doing what I'm doing. It's because it's not just about me. I can be happy making music and recording albums and doing that kind of stuff, but my family life also has to be in that same kind of, you know,
it all has to balance.
It has
to be on
to
the same level, because if one's not happy, the other one's going to suffer, and vice versa.
Exactly. So it's a balance to find a happy medium. And so that's kind of like we were chatting a little earlier about like how I keep my weekends sacred. Well, the pandemic kind of did that for me as well. Like I said,
perfect.
I'll gladly go out on a 2-week tour with somebody if the money's there and it's a band I want to play with and it's fun. Sure. You know what I mean? I don't have a problem because, like I said, when I do the Tout Simplement Country gig, I'm in Halifax for 3 weeks straight. That's my gig. But when I have control over my schedule, in a sense of like, okay, client asks me, hey, when can we record? Well, I try to schedule it usually the Monday to Friday. I don't say I don't work on weekends. I don't mind doing one in here and there, but I'm not going to go back to, you know, doing every weekend, because soon as that happens, then that means my family life goes on a decline. And if that's not in a happy place, then I'm not really happy doing what I love doing as well, which is music.
And then you're distracted because you're thinking about
my music too, because my mind's elsewhere. And if you hire me to work for you, I want to be in your space, and I shouldn't have to be worrying about my home life while you're paying me to be there for you. You know what I mean? So it's always that balance, right? So as long as I keep that at a nice, happy space, and when I'm being hired to do what I do professionally, I can be in their world and not be worrying about this world, because this world is okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's finding that good balance. And honestly, that comes with experience. And it wasn't always like that, because
being able to say no.
Yeah, absolutely. That, you know, be able to say no is it's hard, because I was a yes
it is hard.
my whole life, man. Oh yeah, no problem. Let's do this. Yeah, no problem. But after a while, you start doing that, then you start saying, okay, well, this is at the detrimental of also my family life here as well. So it's so I think now, you know, again, this pandemic, in a weird way, out of anything crappy, there's also good that comes out of it. Just like bad musical experiences, you can either look at it
still
and say,
experience.
Oh man, that was a shitty experience. I give up. I'm throwing in the towel. Or you can say, okay, what did I learn from that experience, and what is it that I can do to come out, you know, learning something and then bringing that to the table. You know what I mean? Every shitty gig or every bad recording session that didn't quite go how we thought it would go, it's not a reason to give up. It's a reason to assess it and say, okay, what is it that I can change or that I can fix to make it better? It's like that with anything in life. You know what I mean? It's just
awesome.
You know, this pandemic was one of those moments for all of us, but
it really was.
We'll come out of it. We will, you know, I mean, we're going to get there. Hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. I don't want to take a whole lot more of your time. So appreciative of your generosity with your time today. But I have a section at the end of the podcast that I call the crash questions.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of quick fire, you know, a little bit, but the first one, which is near and dear to my heart. And so what do you prefer, cake or pie?
Pie.
Good man.
Yeah. I'm an apple pie. If you got a really good apple pie, man, you got my heart.
Yeah.
My wife is always trying to make the same apple pie as my mom. I'm like, because I love my mom's apple pie, right? So, but yeah.
Not to stay on the food thing for too long, but what's your favorite comfort meal?
In a weird way, nachos, man. Homemade nachos. You know what I mean? Like I enjoy a good nacho, like, you know, just I'm more of like a picker. Like I don't like food wise, like, you know, that pâte chinois, there's some of those comfort meals which are like classic staples there.
And
Frico is another one I enjoy. Like I enjoy really good soups, but I guess I'm the guy that craves less. I kind of eat to survive. And it's a weird thing, more or less than like some people's like, oh man, I'm craving Chinese. I think I need Chinese this weekend. I'm more like Chinese. Yeah, sure. Whatever. Sure. You know, it's like, I'm one of those. I mean, like, I know the foods that I don't like for sure. Yeah. But like, I don't get cravings too much. I'm like, I need to have this now. If not, like, I'm going to go. I'm fine eating a sandwich. If it's a good sandwich, right on, man. It's good.
This is a question that I only ask for drummers, and you'll understand why. So if you're laying into a groove, what's your happy place? Is it on the ride or is it in the hi-hat?
hats for me, hi-hats.
It's the hats.
Yeah, just tight,
Oh,
just it's that
Just
pocket
in that
for me.
pocket. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's probably more room for air in a sense because you don't get any wash going on or anything like that. But
Mhm.
there you're really hearing to me like the syncopation between the hat and the snare. And, it's like listening to Nate Smith just groove on a kick and snare for me. I'm like, holy shit. That's
Oh, yeah.
just like,
Just do that for
what a
days.
pocket. Like, oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, me be hi-hat for me.
Really cool.
And it's kind of out of the way too. I find it stays out of the way and lets the music breathe a little bit, the singer
That's true.
singing or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
even for a guitar solo, we tend to want to open up in a guitar solo. It's nice to just kind of bring it right tight and just let them shine, man. Let
Yeah.
it rip.
I'm guilty of that. I crash a lot on my ride too. Like, I mean, I'm, punk band, so it's pretty wide open, right? So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
I got the big 23-inch ride and I'm just laying into that. Yeah.
Shanking it, Derek.
Yeah.
Nice.
So other than because obviously, and I'm a parent as well, so like my family's one of like probably my proudest achievement in life.
Yeah.
Aside from your
Absolutely.
family, because that's number one.
Yeah.
What's the thing that you're most proud of?
Oh.
I said quick fire questions, but not really.
Oh yeah, I know. Now you get me.
No, it's the philosophical ones.
Exactly. Most proud aside from family. I mean, honestly, I'm proud at the fact that I get to honestly play drums for a living. Honestly, like that's music is just, I've been married to it since a kid. So that's a huge, and to still be able to be doing it now at this age where I've seen so many people give up because they didn't get where they wanted to get at a certain era, or they pissed it away because they chose drugs and booze over, their craft. But I don't take that lightly, and I don't take it for granted. I really think I have a gift that was given to me by a family that's, very musical. Like I said, I never went to school for it. I had to learn it on my own. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, or whatever, however you want to look at it. But yeah, I'm just very proud to be able to do that, and proud to, there's a sense of pride too, even as a parent, because most people say, so what's your real job?
Yeah.
What do you do for your real job? You know what I mean? So the fact that I get to live the same quality of life as the guy that's working for Irving down the street from here, or whatever business that he's working for, that I get to live the same quality of life as they do in the same subdivision as they do. And I'm like, yeah, like I do it by fucking banging shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty amazing when you think about it. I mean, like, I didn't have to like live in the 1-bedroom apartment and, not enjoy all that life has to give us in the other day. So, but that's because I look at the business aspect. I treated my music as a business and made the right investments, and I didn't take it lightly that sense, but still proud, because when my kids go to school, it's like, what does your dad do? Oh, he's, because the first thing, stereotypes. Oh, if your dad's a musician, oh, must be a deadbeat,
Yeah.
Or he must be playing for pennies and beer, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's just what's put out there. And I think it's still part of my mission today. Still now, I still have pride. It's like, no, man, you can live just as good of a life as anybody else that went to university and got a degree in something, doing what it is that they're doing. It's all how you play. It's a game in a sense. It's how you play the game, but it's, that's still part of my mission, to prove all those naysayers that looked at us musicians and said, you're probably broke and you don't get any money in the bank and you're just, bunch of drunks or whatever. You guys are good on the weekend though. Those are the guys calling for the last song. When you're done at the end of the night, they're the ones in the bar there.
Yeah.
I still had a customer. I know I'm dragging on here, but I had a customer come to the store at one point when I was working there. His son was playing a guitar. I was like, like he's actually got some pretty good chops. He could do well. And he kind of at that time, and do what? Work in a music store.
Oh,
that was just one of those fucking moments for me. I was like,
man,
you asshole, you serious? Like, and you could tell it's one of these business guys. So whether a lawyer or whether he ran a business or whatever the case may be, but all those events, I still have them. And all those fueled me to prove those assholes wrong. That's, no, it's not just working music store. And some guys working music store are still making a good living anyways, but just to still live the same quality of life as that guy there that show up in his little BMW there thinking that he was superior than us musicians and
Right.
everything else. So
What's he listening to in his fancy BMW?
yeah, it's exactly, or whatever the
Right.
case. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's why I don't take it for granted. So I'm still very proud and grateful to be able to be doing this. And again, I don't get too comfortable because I always have that scaredness of like, if I get too comfortable, that it's going to fall out.
It's gonna go
And
away.
then
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh Jesus, I guess I'm going to go sell paint at Kent now or whatever. But
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's like,
But I mean, I think your
if I had to,
longevity.
I would. You know what I mean, but
Yeah. I think your longevity has a lot to do with you as a person, your personality, very open-minded and just welcoming and willing to, do the work. So you're a hard worker and you
yeah,
take the criticism and, and those are qualities that not a lot of people have all of those qualities.
no.
And I think that's a huge part of your success is you're very personable and fun to be around. Like I've not actually met you in person. This is our first
No, but
time
I'm sure if we were in a
chatting.
bar right now, we would have a good
Oh,
beer
yeah.
together, and we'd have some really good chats.
Absolutely. But that's the thing. Like as a personable person, you
Yeah.
draw that to you, and I think that's a huge part of your success, and it's well deserved.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And it's adapting. And again, that's comes from, the fact of the musical family and my parents, like you did as well, going to set up and I would meet the band members that were playing my dad's band. I mean, like I got to know a lot of strangers and you just kind of see how people interact, right? And like, and it kind of forced me in a sense to interact with people older than me in a weird way. Cause when there was levies, those kind of gigs, I could go watch those gigs. I mean, so I was interacting with more adults. There was no other 7-year-old there going to watch their dad play Johnny Be Good or whatever. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so it's all part of it. So no, I've been very, very lucky in that sense of, having a loving family in that sense. And how would I say, socializing me or giving me that
Networking.
culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we weren't a rich family neither. Like I never been down south with my parents, they or any of that kind of stuff, even though I got to go and do that stuff later on in life, we just kind of maritime base out of Moncton, visit a little bit here and there. And so, yeah, no, I'm very fortunate and I don't take it for granted. Absolutely not. I count my blessings every day that I get to do this, and even on days that I'm tired, because like anything else, even though you love doing something doesn't mean that you don't need a break from it. So even for me this week it's a well-deserved break because I'm diving into an album with Melissa Marshall next week, which is we're doing a full country EP with her and another artist, which is down for the holidays from Alberta. So I'm like,
There you go. Yeah.
taking in this week to be able to just kind of recharge. Cause there is moments where I'm like, oh fuck, I need a break from just listening to music.
Yeah.
And then when I say that to myself, I'm like, I feel bad and guilty. It's like I almost feel like I'm not allowed to be tired because man, there's so many people that would love to be able to work in the field that I'm working in. So sometimes I kind of get mad at myself for feeling that way, but it's not because I don't love doing what I'm doing. It's like anything else. Like it's like Metallica. You're touring 2 years and a half. Yeah. All right, show 273, and you're playing Master of Puppet again there, and Enter Sandman.
With the same gusto and the same feeling.
Yeah, same thing. You got to give her like those guys get tired too. It doesn't mean they hate playing music. It's just they need a break from it. They need to recharge with their family as well. Spend that time. That nurtures a heart, fills up that love tank, and then you know what that does? It gives you back the energy and the gusto to go do her some more. You know what I mean? So one really fuels the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, this has been awesome, man. Again, thank you so much for taking the time during your vacation to have this conversation.
No problem at all. No problem. Honestly, it was the perfect time because I had a couple days to chillax as well, and more than my pleasure to do this with you, man. Honestly, it's always good to just kind of sit down and shoot the breeze about the industry and whatever else that comes into play.
We can have a part 2 sometime.
Yes, exactly.
Right on. Well, thanks a lot, brother.
Awesome stuff. Well, hey, thanks again for having me on the show, and whatever that you're planning for next year or whatever your goals are as well. Wish you best of luck with all that stuff as well.
Yeah, best of luck to you and your family, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
All right.
Well, we'll chat soon again.
Okay. I am so beyond thankful to Danny for agreeing to be on the podcast. It was just such a pleasure to get to meet you and have such an open and honest and wonderful conversation. Top-notch guy. Thanks so much. I will say, if you're looking for someone that'll bring out the best in you and that will deliver the goods, reach out to Danny at the Pumk'n Patch Studios. I'll have the links in the description for either session work, or if you're looking for a studio to record your next project. It's top-notch, state-of-the-art, just a fantastic person to work with. So again, thank you, Danny, for being on the show. He's the real deal. I am super excited about doing another year of the podcast. I have a bunch of fantastic guests lined up that'll be joining me on the podcast this year. If you have anyone that you'd like for me to have on the show, don't hesitate to reach out and send me a message with a suggestion or somebody that you think would be a good fit to have on the show. I'd be more than happy to hear those suggestions, and I'm always open and willing to have a conversation with just about anybody. Bring it on. 2022 is going to be a fantastic year, and I hope you all come along with me on the journey, and that we get to meet and talk to a lot of people. With that said, considering everything going on, take care of yourselves. Self-care is super important. Take care of each other. Be kind. Always be kind. Kindness always wins. So stay safe, and until next time, bye.